Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this, the Cult Movie Podcast, Cult Potato. As always, I am your host, Campion. Joining me is my good buddy Grady. How's it hanging?
It is hanging good. It's always a good day when we get to sit around and talk about Scrubs.
Oh, no banter,
Nope.
beating around the bush, just jumping straight into it.
I sensed that you had some sort of intro planned for me, and I wanted to shoot that off at the pass and just get straight in to avoid
Well, joke's
whatever
on you.
ridicule you'd give me.
Joke's on you. I didn't have anything prepared.
Ooh. I should have just let you flounder.
I had a busy week.
That is entirely fair, but luckily Scrubs is one of those shows that you don't need to have watched every single episode back through to still remember the amazing cast, the storylines, and really, if you're just thinking about starting watching the show, the first 3 episodes will give you a pretty good idea of what you're in for.
Yes. All right, Mr. Eager McBeaver, why don't you give us a little intro to this show of yours?
Alrighty, well, Scrubs is a hospital drama comedy, I guess would be the 2 pieces. It very much blends the comedicness of, you know, the characters and the storylines that are coming around with the seriousness that is a hospital. It doesn't shy away from the nitty-gritty, sad, depressing parts of working at a hospital.
There's a lot of incredibly
You're gonna cry. But you're also gonna laugh, quite possibly in the same episode. They are great at being able to switch between the 2 modes. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of the more sadder moments as the like truly memorable episodes. And super topical, at least with one actor. But at its core, it is a buddy comedy. Zach Braff playing JD, and Donald Faison playing Turk as their bromance, I guess. Undefined relationship just grows from, you know, med school internships all the way up to residence and out the other side. No, they stopped at residence. They never went any further. They never did any teaching.
I mean, you've got one, you know, major cast member, Grady. Eliza Coupe, who plays Denise Mahoney, introduced in season 8, would go on to become a resident in season 9, Grady. I don't know how you could miss that. She was the only character. I believe she was the only character who from season 8 who goes on to star in season 9.
I'm gonna bleep every mention of season 9 in this episode. I don't care if there's a 10-minute stretch of a cow mooing. I am going to bleep every mention of it.
My original like thing as a goof was that I was only gonna watch season 9 and none of the rest of it.
Good luck getting through that.
Yeah, but then not only did I like not want to do that and I wanted to watch other stuff, I had to drive all the way back home to Hamilton to go pick up a bunch of my crap, and I had a bunch of personal garbage to sort out. So it was a busy week, but I still got to watch some certified bangers in there. Okay, Grady. So you were talking to me before about how you wanted to run this, but how do you want to run this, Grady? How would you, the king of Scrubs, as I prefer to call you,
all right,
I refer to you as that purely because you love this show, not in any sort of derogatory way. But how did you want to do it?
I feel like, you know, previously we've gone through the cast, and we kind of found with Futurama that they could take quite a while. You know, we do have our main cast of, you know, maybe 5 or 6 here, but the supporting cast is another one of those shows where the supporting cast is so memorable and drives the show home. I feel like probably more than Futurama and more than Community, this was a show of a supporting cast, and so I don't know, I think we just sort of run through the cast, but while we're going through there, probably talk a little bit about, you know, if there was a favorite episode or a cool moment that we remember with that, to just bring it in there. Otherwise, we're going to be piling up talking about episodes until the end of it all.
Okay. Well then, let's start with the man himself, Mr. Zach Braff, JD John Dorian, our principal viewpoint character.
for the entirety of the show. No, as much as I joke about it, I probably won't ignore season 9 for the concept of it. But JD to me is the character that has the biggest arc, I guess. He starts off as your typical, horny intern, and then he has this emotional journey throughout, quite often involving different relationships and partners throughout. But it is a comedy drama. You can't forget that. But eventually, when he starts off, he's in this role where Dr. Cox, who I'm sure we'll talk about, probably one of the better characters of the show, is so hard on him and bullying him, and he's just working constantly to try and get the approval of this father figure, certified asshole, throughout the entire show. And then we see, as we're getting into the later seasons, JD move into that residency spot, and now he's got his own interns underneath him.
Yeah, moving into the more mentorship role that Cox was, grooming him for, I think we can say, that he was kind of building up to. And, if I'm going to be honest, I did find, early season 1 JD to be kind of insufferable at times. He's not bad, don't get me wrong, but there are just some times where he has this whole deer in the headlights thing, which is where Carla's nickname of Bambi comes from. But there are some moments where it's just like, dude, you're a doctor, please just focus for 1 second.
Yeah, it's kind of like the other shows as well, right? Where we're like that first half of season 1, or even the entirety of season 1, people don't have their footing. It's not the show you remember. When I think about Scrubs, I remember, season 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of things. And then you go back and you watch your season 1s and you're like, okay, this is a little rough. These characters don't fit the archetypes they eventually end up in. And that's where that growth comes from.
Yeah, and I think that JD, he is exaggerated as time, as the series goes on. But he definitely, there's definitely, quite a bit of maturity as it goes along, because he is quite immature early on, and once that starts to settle in, he's a much more likable protagonist, rather than someone I want to, throttle.
Yeah, I think the show sort of starts off with these 3 main characters, JD, Turk, and Elliot, and they have, each of them have a something that they're missing, whether it's the maturity of JD, or the humility and interpersonal connections of Turk, or the confidence that Elliot needs. And they sort of develop it in that first season, and then that's the characters that you remember afterwards. They all get that little, missing piece throughout the first season.
Okay, so I feel like we could just keep going all day on him, but we really need to, because there's more characters in this show than there was in Community, so we really need to pick up the pace here. Okay, next.
No, we'll just record a 3-hour episode, it's fine.
Let's go to Elliot, played by Sarah Chalk. I am not an Elliot fan. She improves a lot, but man, early Elliot is just not. She's comes off as very abrasive to me. It takes her a while to really warm up to me. I know I'm just kind of shooting out of the gate with that, Grady, but I just felt like I had to get that off my chest. I also feel like she also played the most insufferable and worst character on on How I Met Your Mother. So I think it's a lot of unfair bias bleeding over.
Do you at least like her in Rick and Morty?
Yeah, of course I do. She's great.
You're not entirely hating on Sarah Chalk.
Wait, she plays Beth, right?
Yeah.
The mother? Yes, okay, yeah. No, she's fantastic in that. It's amazing. In fact, I didn't even realize that until you said it, and then I'm like, wait, she's in Rick and Morty. She's the mother. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
She's actually, yeah.
Now, this is one I can agree with you. I think of all the characters, Elliot is the one that takes the longest to click into a role where you don't, as you say, I guess at the start, want to throttle her all the time. Yeah. She stays floating around for a real long time. She's dating Keith on and off. Even that sort of piece is not, peak Elliot. If I was looking at our mains, I was going to say, peak JD and peak Turk is way higher than peak Elliot.
Yeah, yeah. Because like it's very much she is like I get it. A part of it is that she's fairly insensitive and not so much outspoken, but it's more like she just doesn't think what she says through properly. And if it happened like every now and again, but it just keeps happening over and over and over and over again, it does really start to wear on that. And don't get me wrong, once she improves and she starts to, again, this is about maturing as people. Once she matures, like JD did, she's a lot better, and she's a fantastic character. But goddamn, early Elliot is rough.
I would liken her, to call back to a previous episode, to early Britta, where the character does change quite drastically in terms of their outlook and stuff like that, and the early seasons of them is, as you say, insufferable. And it's definitely not the best parts, for sure.
Yeah, and it does make me feel kind of bad for crapping on her, especially since I know that she does improve a lot, but
look, we can't just sit here like cheering every single character, right? We got to call out some.
True. We just jumped right into it without even describing like what kind of person she is. She's a doctor. She becomes
shocker on that one.
Yeah, I mean, sure, about doctors, who know. She joins the hospital around the same time that JD and Turk do. She starts off like they start off having like an on-off relationship throughout the series. It's not as bad as some. It's not like a Ross and Rachel kind of thing. And yeah, she remains like because they both frequently date other people throughout the series, but it's sort of one of those things that they always kind of get back to. And she's a very like she has a lot of neuroses. I'd describe her as a very neurotic person, which again is part of the reason why it does tend to grind my gears a bit.
Yeah, and if you're talking about like the end of her arc, then the show ends with a flash forward of JD and Elliot getting married and having a kid, and their kids growing up and all of that, and keeping the friendship with Cox and Turk and Carla and all of them. And it's quite this wholesome moment. And so, the ending is great. It's just getting there, and that start and that slog in the middle. She does play a bit ditzy blonde at the start, I'd kind of say. It's sort of, you got to question why she's at the hospital. But once she gets her mojo, she's pretty good. But she is still just played off for laughs. Like, I don't remember exactly what season, but things like Do the Heavy and stuff like that. Her best parts are when she's doing comedy work. Some people like JD and Turk, you can say, like, I can remember great moments when they've done serious stuff and great moments where they've done comedy stuff. Most of my favorite Elliot moments are, pure comedy spots, and usually where she's the butt of the joke as well.
Okay, so moving on from Elliot there, we move on to what I honestly consider my favorite character. Yes,
Wrong
I know.
answer.
I like him more than Dr. Cox, I know. Well, maybe it's a bit of a tie, but Grady, I just love Turk. He's just great. He's just like a total bro. How could you not love Turk, Grady? I'm sorry. He gave us the Fortnite dance, Grady. He gave us the default dance.
Oh, man. And hasn't seen a cent of it, to my understanding. The cast did a whole a podcast with, I want to say, Vulture. They all came on and they talked about that. But yeah, Turk came in, he's, compared to the other two, he's in surgery, came into a different area, so he has different characters that he interacts with from time to time. And his starting pieces, he's sort of this jock, I guess. The surgeons are the jocks and the doctors are the nerds, how it's played off. And he's got this jock and nerd relationship with JD and himself that eventually becomes the big bromance. And he's just got an ego. He thinks he's the hottest shit in the world, but he doesn't really... I think he was calling his patients by their diagnosis at the start. And then JD sort of teaches him a little bit of humility in how to treat patients like humans, and then he rises through the ranks of surgeons because he's the only one that exhibits that sort of caring behavior that JD sort of nudged him into.
Yeah. And speaking of his relationship with JD, one of the many, it's definitely a well that they go back to on more than one occasion.
You got a lot to pick from here. I don't know which one you're going to bring up.
Well, no, just say that they're very close as friends, just ridiculously close.
They're just two bros, maybe roommates sometimes.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with two bros being bros.
Many episodes in season 2 have them sleeping in the same bed because they're just, bunking in the same flat.
Yeah, they have a taxidermy dog as well. Yeah, they do obviously play off the is JD gay piece quite a lot. But honestly, I think their relationship is best when you just view it as two best friends just being best friends.
Yeah.
There doesn't need to be any romance aspect there. He's just JD's chocolate bear.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the way they play it up is that the two of them are fairly sensitive, and they're pretty strong with their feminine sides, as they say on multiple occasions. Definitely more JD and Turk, although Turk does have his moments. It's the whole sensitive guy and manly man sort of a dynamic that they've got going on. Although Turk is definitely leans more to the sensitive side in that, and they're just two bros who are just very comfortable around each other to a degree that not many people are. But you know what? Good for them. They're having a great time. They're just bros,
Yeah, you'd never catch Turk having an apple teeny. That's a reference. Bit of a cut there. But yeah, we might as well talk about their dynamic and some moments between the two. Obviously, if you've seen very little of the show, you probably still know things like Eagle, where Turk will just fling JD around, or many different things. One of my favorite things that I always played back season 5 or 6, when they've got interns underneath them, and they're playing Space Invaders from the roof of the hospital, just throwing water balloons at the interns down there. I don't want to say their friendship reminds me of us, because that's a little up ourselves, but in the way of one of them will have a stupid idea, and the other person, instead of saying, that's a stupid idea, no, will build on it. And then the stupid idea gets bigger and bigger, and then you go out and just do something just absolutely insane, like playing Space Invaders with the interns.
I don't know what you're talking about, Grady. I say as we're, 20 plus episodes into a podcast?
Off a joke, man.
off of a joke, yes. Off of a potato, like a couch potato joke.
Yeah, that we recorded so many years ago, and I've been so lazy on editing, I haven't even put in most of the video versions. But yeah, it's just that loving, like, bros being bros. You can't fault it. It's
Wait,
good
which
stuff.
which one of us is Turk and which one's JD, or do we just swap that role every now and again?
I feel a little racist picking JD for myself here.
I think personality-wise, I think we line up with Turk. Like, I line up with Turk and you line up with JD, if I'm being real.
There you go. If the darker-skinned fellow says it, then I'm allowed to say it.
Then it's not racist. There you go. I gave you a way out, Grady. Yeah. And if I'm being honest, like, his ego does kind of, deflate a little as the series goes on, but I think he has, like, in terms of character arcs, he's probably the most consistent character in the series. Like, he gets less character development than most of the main cast, and you know what? That's fine, because Turk was already pretty great to start out with. There's not a lot of places you need to take him. I mean, there was the whole, like he got married, he had kids and all that, but there was the whole diabetes thing. But apart from that, he didn't really need a lot of character development, especially since we do get a lot of strong character arcs in this series. It isn't really necessary, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, he grounded himself pretty quickly. I feel like any issues he had he was probably one of the first characters to start walking and get out of their season 1 shadow. And so, yeah, I think he's probably one of the more well-rounded season 1, season 2 kind of characters. Whereas other people still needed a bit more development at that point. Even Dr. Cox, who I'm going to praise when we get to him, he still needed some development around there. He was still that one-dimensional character. Turk pretty quickly showed you his facets, and then he starts getting with Carla pretty early, from my recollection. And I feel like they're married or at least having kids fairly early in the show. I can't tell you the season, but I want to say like 4 or 5. Like, it was pretty early in the run.
Okay, so since we've covered I don't know, for whatever reason, I've decided, that we're going we're going one character, then the character, their spouse. So we've done Turk. Let's move on to Carla. Why did I say Turner? There's no one in this series called Turner.
I'm sure there is.
Grady, what did you think about Carla, Grady?
I think Carla suits her purpose. She doesn't have a huge amount of facets to her. She has some amazing moments. Obviously, my mind's going to go straight to the song about being Dominican. But yeah, I think her big pieces and most of these side characters, what we're about to say, are that their big bright moments are when they're interacting with one of the main 4. I'm going to count Cox in the main 4. So, Carla Turk obviously got that loving relationship, and they have quite a few funny moments with a relationship. Carla JD is almost like a nephew kind of relationship where she wants to take care of little Bambi. Carla Elliott becomes more of that best friend, even though they had massive conflict at the start of the show.
Yeah. I remember a season 2 episode, which was just them just trying to figure out how they worked in the group dynamic, because they're fine when everyone's around, but when it's just those two, it's just like but they got past that at some point.
I think Carla's strongest moments, in my opinion, are the Carla Cox moments. I think that's where you get some truly like heart-wrenching bits and pieces, because she can truly crack his exterior. We sort of skipped over him, but Cox is the like hard guy, and Carla is just one of those characters that can constantly crack the shell and get to the gooey insides.
And okay, so she's pretty sassy, right? She feels that stereotypical sassy, spicy Latina woman.
Of course.
It's the early 2000s. Give them a break, though. Not everything can be perfect, all right?
Look,
I mean, we're lucky that they avoided a bunch of like gay panic bullshit with JD and Turk, all right? I mean, it's not like Friends, have you watched Friends recently?
I have not.
There's an obscene amount of gay panic shit in there.
I'm kind of glad we didn't get it. It was a bit, I'd say, almost embraced with Turk and JD.
It was embraced. It's just like, hey, two guys can be friends, even if they're not romantically interested in one another. They're just bros. Calm down. But yeah, Carla honestly does have quite a few moments that I really love. I think it's because she represents the nurses of the hospital, who are often quite overworked and underappreciated in the hospital system, even though they do a lot of really hard and important work.
Still, fact, multiple years later, reflecting IRL, pay nurses more.
Yes. In fact, the episode, season 2 episode, where our interns, made residents, JD, Turk, and Carla, are they're working a night shift, and they pretty much have the whole hospital to themselves. Like, they're pretty much running the place at that point. And, Carla is the one helping them out. She, gets them into gear. Even though, on the totem pole, she's well below them as residents, but, she's very competent and she has seniority and, her friends respect her opinion. But multiple times throughout the episode, JD is just saying, we're the most, oh man, we're the most, like the most underappreciated people at the hospital, referring to themselves. But then the camera will cut away to Carla, not standing not very far by. And then, one of the closing scenes is that they're all leaving, as the sun's rising and everyone's coming in, and the nurses are like, "Oh, what, Carla? I thought you were I thought you didn't have the night shift." And she's like, "Oh yeah, but I took it to help out some friends." And I thought that was really nice. She can get a bit overbearing with her, her mother instincts with her friends, and wanting to give out advice. And there are a few story arcs in later seasons that kind of cover that. But I do like the whole these are my friends, these are people that I care about and look out for. I do really like that aspect of her character.
Yeah, I would say it's a toss-up probably between her and Nurse Roberts. Definitely her later on in the show. Yeah. That is that sort of mother of the hospital. That is there taking care of everybody, whether they're Bambi or not, and just making sure that the whole hospital runs smoothly. She's sort of like underneath Nurse Roberts at the start, but by the time we reach like season 3 or 4, she's really taken her stride there.
Exactly. Okay. Grady.
You gonna finally let me talk about Dr. Cox?
Hey Grady, you want to talk about Dr. Cox?
I do. John C. McGinley, great actor, amazing.
Fantastic actor.
Pulls off this character so well. Dr. Cox starts off as just the biggest asshole around. You think he's just treating JD and Turk and Elliot like shit because he can. And then you just sort of slowly, more of the facade peels back. You see what he's, fighting for with the, with Dr. Calso, I don't remember what his role is. Chief of Medicine, I think. And, he's fighting and he cares about the hospital. And the only reason he's pushing JD like that is because he wants him to succeed. And then his arc is obviously he ends up in that Chief of Medicine role.
Yeah.
And it just gets harder and harder for him. And he's sort of, what JD was to him, he was to Calso. And then once Calso leaves, he's like, oh wow, this job's actually pretty damn hard.
Yeah, and he's just like, because when you're the Chief of Medicine and you have so many, plates you need to keep up in the air, it's a difficult thing to manage. In fact, so if I keep going to season 2, I watched a lot of season 2, and so that's sort of, it's the first thing I watched, because I honestly skipped over season 1. I usually do that when we do rewatches for shows, because, well, for obvious reasons.
They're rough.
But there's a great episode where where Kelso runs a competition between the interns / residents, like whoever brings the most interesting case gets to go to this conference. And Kelso's like, oh, it's JD, and he's like, oh, you won't follow them like this shit, you won't do this. But then when it turns out JD did do that, JD tells him straight up, and he's just like, look, I want to get places, I need to be high up in the food chain to help people. You need to play the game, and I need to play the game, and I think that you need to as well. Which I do love it when you have like a back and forth kind of mentorship where one character is definitely the one being mentored and he's getting the most learning, but then he teaches things back to the other person and that helps them to grow. I know that's a very old staple of storytelling, and there's that, that cliche of, oh, I learned more from my students than they did from me, but I still like it, especially when it's done well. What can I say? I'm a sucker for the classics.
Yeah, it was both ways. I think you could definitely say that Cox needed JD and that JD needed Cox. I'm not going to forget I want to say it's last episode. It's pretty much near the end where he tricks Dr. Cox into saying that JD was the best goddamn doctor to ever come through this hospital. And he's like just listening off to the side. That gets tears every time. Just because of what it means. You've sat through 8 seasons of him just belittling JD, and then he finally gets those words of affirmation that he's waited for so long. But then you jump into a completely different side of things, and you look at where Cox was going through his depressive spiral, and and he was like not leaving the house, and he was just cuddled up in a blanket on the couch, and everybody was taking watches to take care of him and everything, and JD sort of breaks him out and like kicks him in the guts, and that's the reason he sort of comes back to work. And that's, yeah. I think I'll leave it at that. I don't want to be here all day.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like you could just go on and on about Cox. There's a lot to him. And on top of that, John C. McGinley, you know, when he delivers a lot of Kelso's like Cox's like one-liners and insults, he's just a very funny. He's probably the funniest character on the show, which is why people gravitated to him so much. Like, he just has a lot of really good lines, and John C. McGinley delivers them fantastically. You know, it's simple, but hey, it works. And I think that also that, you know, since that helped to make him so popular, I think that's what gave the writers, you know, incentive to kind of flesh him out a bit more. Because, you know, when a character becomes more popular with the audience, then that kind of incentivizes the network and the writers to focus more on them. Although I think even from the beginning, like, Dr. Cox was always going to be, like, one of the main, like, big characters. I don't think he was, like, a breakout character kind of thing. I think they always intended for him to, you know, to be a big focus of the show.
Yeah, I got two moments of his that I don't want to move on before doing, but my favorite line that I can never get out of my head, and I have used IRL so many times, is the people are bastard-coded bastards with a bastard filling. And it's just the different outlooks on the world, but man, I have called people that, and it is so satisfying to say. But the two moments of his that I want to mention, you know, you can't escape one of them, but I'll leave it for second. And the first one is what leads him into that depressive episode, and it's a scene I rewatch a lot. It's probably one of my top 5 moments in Scrubs, and it is the rabies episode. I think it's called My Sandwich. And it's just about Cox rushing to get this transplant from a patient that's come in and passed away. And he transplants all their bits and pieces around into like 20 odd people. And then throughout the next day, he pushed and pushed and pushed for this. Throughout the next day, all of those patients just begin to pass away because it turns out the person had rabies. And you just see Cox just deteriorating after every single one. And I think this is one of those episodes that really hammers home the realities of working in a hospital. You do have to make quick decisions, and your quick decisions can be the difference between life and death. And I think I'm going to butcher the line, even though it's one of my favorite lines at the end of the episode. JD's like, you told me the second you start blaming yourself for people losing their lives, there's no coming back. And Cox just says, yeah, I did. And then just like slams the door shut behind him and runs off into his little like 3-episode depression spiral. And it's just another one of those moments that really hits hard.
I'm guessing that I know what the second one is.
It's Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
Career resurgence right now.
Yeah, he's really doing it for himself. I was honestly going to say Laverne's funeral, but
it's also a good one.
That hit like a truck, you know, the part where JD's just like, where do you think we are?
Yeah. It's
like,
it's rough.
That got me.
Yeah. To TLDR the episode, basically we run through this entire episode. Cox's brother is in town, played by Brendan Fraser, and he's just joking with Cox. It's one of the times we get to see Cox truly happy. His brother's taking photos. We don't quite know, you know, why he's here, and we get through the episode, and it turns out, you know, he stops taking photos, or his camera disappears about midway through the episode, and you slowly start to figure out that the only character interacting with him is Cox. Yeah. And it like turns out that his brother passed away during that episode, like the midway point, and he's not handling it very well. And then, as you say, it leads it to that very famous line where Cox is talking to his, to a figment of his brother, and he's like, "Oh, we're at my child's birthday party, and there's cake everywhere. Don't you want to take a photo?" And that's when you realize he doesn't have his camera with him and stuff, and that's when JD walks in, and yeah, as you said, it's like, "Where do you think we are?" And then all of a sudden, there's just dead silence. Not a character says a word. The song kicks in, and it is just one of the saddest funeral scenes ever. Again, it's another one of those top 5 moments from Scrubs for sure. There you
one
go,
of us
I
thought that happened at Laverne's funeral. One of us is mixing it up, and I don't know which one it is.
Oh, it is definitely Cox's brothers. It's Brendan Fraser's funeral.
Okay. Because don't get me wrong, they're both super depressing.
Yeah, Laverne's is her goodbye scene. She's laying in a hospital bed, and each character comes in to say goodbye, and her ghost is sort of, imparting wisdom on people. And that one's where Carla gets hit the hardest at the end of it. I think she's the last one to say her goodbyes. And then, from memory, Laverne passes away after that.
Laverne does die, yes.
I meant as she just finished giving out her last wisdom.
Right.
Kind of thing.
And Laverne was the head nurse, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Played by Aloma Wright.
Yeah. I remember what character she was. I just couldn't remember whether or not she was just a nurse or whether or not she was the head nurse.
She was definitely the nurse in charge, whether her badge said that she was the head nurse or not.
True. The sassy black lady in charge. Again, early 2000s. Cut him a break.
But she did so well that, once they killed off her character, they ended up, I don't remember if it was the very next season or a season or two later, just bringing her back as a completely different character and pretending that she was a different person because they loved Aloma Wright so much. The show was just missing that piece, and that's when she came back as Nurse Roberts, I think. I'd been using the names interchangeably incorrectly. All right, what character do you want to do next? Or you just want to blast through the side?
I'm a bit confused, Grady. I may have zoned out there, but wasn't Laverne's last name Roberts?
Oh, don't you do this to me, Campion.
Wasn't her name Laverne Roberts?
Don't you do this.
Wasn't she Laverne Roberts?
She was, but then she came back as a different character, right?
I don't remember that. You were... Grady, there's 9 seasons of the show, Grady.
Don't you do this to me.
I'm pretty certain that her name was Laverne Roberts.
She was, but then I thought she came back as a different Nurse Roberts.
I don't know what you're talking about, Grady.
She came back as Shirley Roberts.
Okay, her sister, I'm guessing.
Nope. Just says Shirley is a nurse at Sacred Heart, but nobody notices her resemblance to an old nurse except JD. There you go.
Okay.
And it was because they thought the season where Laverne passed away was the last season, and they got renewed. And so he brought Aloma Wright back as Shirley Richards. There you go. Look. I was right. I had a few facts wrong. But I was vaguely right. I take that.
Anyway, with all... Oh, Grady, do you want to lead us in talking about the main characters from Season 9?
Well, I feel like, we're 40 minutes into this. We don't want to fill in too much, but completely ignoring Season 9, we've still...
Just one quick right, because one of the interns is played by Aziz Ansari, and I cannot stand him. He's so annoying to me. Continue.
We still got so many...
Yes.
I don't know, I guess they could be main characters. You've still got Kelso, you've still got the janitor.
Kelso and the janitor I would consider main characters.
And then afterwards you start falling into side characters.
I know for the janitor, his whole thing was that he was only supposed to be in the pilot, but, he was so popular and the writers loved him so much that they brought him back. Which was a good call. Good call.
Neil Flynn is amazing. Again, the fact that we don't know his character's name other than janitor, perfect. Love it. And yeah,
I know one. Do you know one theory about who the janitor really is?
I refuse any theories. The janitor is the janitor. But
one theory is that the janitor is Neil Flynn. That in the universe of Scrubs, he's just fallen on hard times, so he's had to take a job as a hospital janitor.
Yeah, I think The janitor is probably, if you're like thinking about the most theory part, then that's always what comes up. And Scrubs is linked to Cougar Town via creator and via a couple of the actresses and actors and characters as well. I think Ted showed up over there a couple times. And so, yeah, there's been connections flying around with other shows and stuff, but I like that the janitor remained a mystery. He's there to be the foil to JD in a different way to Cox. And he does his job well.
Cox is trying to be the mentor to try and improve him. The janitor's just, he's just
messing with him.
He's messing with him. And no matter what shift they're on, he's always on it with them. So...
yeah, the janitor's just ever present. And yeah, one of the better parts of the show, but he doesn't have massive arcs or anything like that. He just shows up, delivers an awesome moment, and then disappears off into the thing. Sometimes he'll be prominent in the episodes, and sometimes he'll just jab like here or there and disappear off.
In fact, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, like, wasn't there a bit in like the finale when it's like, oh, JD doesn't work at Sacred Heart anymore, and then he drops his mop and then just walks out and just quits on the spot.
Yeah. There's a whole piece because obviously JD was like, I'm leaving. Can you please just tell me your name? And then like he gives him his name, and then someone else walks by and calls him something else. And then, the janitor shows up the next day and was like, "Oh, he's actually leaving." And then, like, they confirm that JD's actually gone. And then you're right, he just drops his mop and walks out, never to be seen again. It's like, my only job here is to mess with JD. But he also has a lovely wedding episode as well. So it's a lady.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Another one of the greatest episodes.
There's a lot of really great episodes.
You get the tikis that Turk and JD have to that seem to always befall bad luck. And a lot of characters have character moments on that double parter, that wedding episode, that develop them quite a bit more.
Yeah. And of course we have Grady. Sorry, Grady, just to cut you off there, but we didn't even talk about the actual best character. Just good old Ted. Good old Ted from Legal.
Ted from Legal, man. You can't say enough good things about him. It's funny that we're talking about him before we talk about Kelso. But yeah.
Wait, sorry, I completely flew over my head. But did you mention that was he also in Cougar Town?
He showed up, for some episodes. I don't know, was he reoccurring or did he just show up for some episodes?
I'm just looking that up. He was in 3 episodes.
There you go. Yeah, they I believe he played Ted in Cougar Town. Yeah, Ted Buckland.
Yeah.
There was a couple of Scrubs.
Yeah. Also, to tie it back to a previous thing we talk about, Abed makes a cameo in Cougar Town.
It's all linked. Scrubs and Community are in the same canon universe.
And when I say I don't mean that Danny Pudi made a cameo. I mean Abed made a cameo.
Yeah, which means Scrubs and Cougar Town are both shows that are filmed in the Community universe.
Yes, exactly. Like it's the way it's presented. It does seem played off as if Abed just snuck onto the set and he just happened to be there during filming. It's a blink and you'd miss it kind of thing, but it's pretty great. I'll send you the clip. But keep going. Oh, Ted, great a cappella band.
Yeah, I was honestly when the news came out about Sam Lloyd's passing, it hit pretty hard. He was just such an integral part, and so many of these side characters were, but Ted was, I guess, relatable. To the point, like, he was just an overworked hospital lawyer that was severely depressed, hated his boss, hated his job, and just stuck through it. He wanted Kelso gone so badly, then Kelso's gone, and he's, like, celebrating and hooting and hollering, in a really sad moment, I guess, but it was played off for laughs. My favorite Ted moment is his briefcase. I think Elliot asks him what's in the briefcase, and he's like, well, there's a button with a smiley face on it, and a gun. One's for if I get sad, and one's for if I get really sad. And it's played off for laughs at the time, but it really just puts the Ted character into place. You know, this isn't just a guy who hates his job. This character is severely depressed. And taking meds for it the whole show.
I can just imagine him and Eeyore like sitting in a support group, just having miserable lives.
Yeah, it's he plays that character and he plays it damn well. As you say, a cappella band, amazing.
The Worthless Peons, which is an amazing name for a band.
Yeah,
Although
which I believe is a real
actual
band
group,
as well.
Yeah, they're called like the Blanks, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they did the song for the wedding episodes. Because I listened to that back a little bit as well.
And you know what? They gave Ted a girlfriend, which I liked. That was good. Although I think, because I'm just reading the trivia, apparently in Cougar Town, it revealed that she left him. So
yeah, she's more of a main character in Cougar Town. Yeah. Alrighty,
Wait, is she?
Yeah, she does some babysitting.
I've never seen Cougar Town, so...
yeah, she does a babysitting gig there. Sorry, I've just been completely sidelined 50 minutes into this episode, because I went to Sam Lloyd's Wikipedia page, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I learnt that Christopher Lloyd's his uncle.
Oh,
Look. That was news to me just now.
I didn't know that either, so...
But yeah, it's, alright. Some good actors from the Lloyd family. I feel like we're coming up. We've gone quite a bit into the show already. I just want to, I guess, rapid fire some of the characters. We haven't talked about Kelso. Kelso is the closest thing you have to a villain in this show. I would phrase him as the literal devil.
From the human condition, am I right?
Hey.
Am I right? Hey.
He has dressed up as the devil on multiple occasions. He's like Cox turned up to 11. And unlike Cox, you can't be sure he was actually trying to do everything for the good. He did it, I guess, for the betterment of the hospital. And he loves a good muffin. Loves a good muffin.
Okay, we have Jordan, Cox's. Well, they start out divorced at the beginning of the series, and then eventually they get back together.
Yeah, his on again and off again.
Yeah. Although, unlike Kelso, she's because they're both assholes. They're both mean.
Oh yeah,
but I wouldn't say she's as mean as Kelso. They're about the same level of mean. It's just a different flavor of mean.
That's why they work so well together.
Kelso's more abrasive, where she's a bit more vindictive.
Yeah, I'd be more scared of her, for sure.
Oh yes, 100%. But no, she's the back and forth she has with Cox is always an absolute right. Played by Krista Miller.
Yeah.
Sorry,
again, another amazing actress, I believe, goes on to be one of the main characters in Cougar Town.
Yes, she does. That I do know. I have seen her in promo.
I wanted to double check that before I said that, but
and to continue the trend, her aunt is Susan St. James, a relatively prevalent actor, but this was before our time, so we wouldn't know. We don't know most of the things she's been in. I know MASH. She was in MASH, there you go. She played Aggie on MASH.
They have a kid, Jack, and eventually Jennifer later on. Jack is an amazing part of the show who you got to watch grow up as well, starting as a wee child and eventually getting quite a big role towards the end of the show. Jennifer, favorite joke ever, because JD went around this entire time and eventually convinced Jordan just to piss off Cox to name their child Jennifer Dylan Cox so that their child was JD Cox. But I'm I'm sure Cox ended up liking the name.
Sorry, I was just reading stuff about MASH. I'm sorry, I got caught up.
Stop getting distracted by MASH. We got to talk about the Todd.
I was just like, yeah, MASH was really good. It's like one of the few classic TV shows I've actually seen. It's like, yeah, MASH was actually really good. And if I'm being honest, MASH actually has a lot in common with Scrubs. Like because MASH was more like a military hospital, but it did have the whole, this is a hospital or like medical care sort of setting. That has its comedy, but then it really plays a lot with a lot of its serious, more dramatic moments, which is a part of the reason why MASH is one of the most like critically acclaimed television shows of all time. So I don't know. I guess you could think of it as like a MASH is like a proto Scrubs, or Scrubs is like kind of like a spiritual successor to MASH. I don't know. It just occurred to me, and I'm just throwing it out there just to make myself seem smart.
I know you're talking about how, like, well put together the shows are, and I'm sitting here trying to segue into the Todd, which on the Wikipedia page for Todd on the Scrubs wiki, I think sums him up in one sentence. Todd is known for his non-creative sexual innuendos and high fives.
Non-creative. That's an amazing one. Like, the quote that I've got here is, I'd like to double her entendre.
Yeah. The Todd is like if Turk never grew up. If Turk stayed being the jock surgeon, just misogynistic.
Ludicrously misogynistic.
But we love him for it. The Todd would not pass in the 2010s, 2020s.
Oh, no. Although I do like, there is a line that I remember where it's like, the Todd appreciates hot, regardless of gender, age, or disability.
Yeah, he's
a progressive misogynist. Give him some credit.
I guess he's sex obsessed would be one way to put him. And yeah, he works well playing off other characters again. He's the most pure comedy character.
Yeah. And to be fair, he's not the worst. He doesn't like, whilst he's a bit pervy and he does cross a few, like, some boundaries, at least he doesn't, like, actively sexually assault anyone. Which, considering the time that this was made, it could have gone in that direction, is all I'm saying. He could have been worse, but hey, he was funny.
He could have been a lot worse.
That sums it up. And to be fair, I don't think anyone aside from Turk really liked him. He only just stuck around because he was just, like, a really good surgeon. Like, being a surgeon's really hard, so he's a dumbass, but, like, he's still a surgeon. So,
My favorite Todd scene, they're recreating the scene from Risky Business. I think Cox has the day off or something, and he's sliding in with his socks and the white shirt, and then JD slides in, and then Turk slides in, and then the Todd slides in this banana hammock, and I did not invite the Todd. Like, he's just always good for a laugh.
Yeah. And I do think he actually does hit on men on a number of occasions, doesn't he?
I don't think he shows any specific preference one way or the other.
I mean, it's as he said, he appreciates hot. It doesn't matter. In fact, I think at one point, I think it's in season 8, it has mentioned that he is in a polyamorous relationship with a man and a woman. And he didn't show preference towards either one, so.
Entirely possible. Maybe he's more progressive than any of the other characters.
Let's not go that far, dude. I mean, this is a man who has more sexual harassment complaints than any other hospital, than, like, anyone else at the hospital. Maybe even, like, if you combined all the sexual harassment complaints from, like, every hospital in the state the show is set in, then you'll start approaching the number that he's got.
Maybe.
Actually, what state is the show set in? I actually don't know that.
California.
Huh. Go figure.
I'm gonna butcher the name of the city. San DeFrangelis. Clearly, San Diego and Los Angeles and San Francisco all just sort of thrown together.
I just had to quickly Google to make sure that it's not like an actual city. No, it's not. Because it sounds ridiculous, but it could be one of those things that's ridiculous, but it's still like an actual place.
Yeah, last character I sort of want to throw in here just because we are reaching time. Doug. Love me some Doug. Was a failed doctor that just kept killing his patients and then eventually started working at the morgue because that made sense.
Yeah, he's a good coroner. Go figure.
But again, he's just the butt of all the jokes. And he plays really well. And if we sat here and we talked about every single one of the side characters, we'd be here for another hour. So I wanted to throw Doug in there just to name him by mention. I don't know if you have anyone else you wanted to throw in as you currently skim through the character list.
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, there's JD's family,
Yeah.
Like JD's brother, for example.
Mm-hmm. You also got Seymour Beardface. Beardface.
Yes. Sure. Hooch.
Hooch is crazy.
Who, of course, would later go on to star in The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Yeah, you got the Dr. Kim Briggs.
Mm-hmm.
We're both probably...
played by Elizabeth Banks. She's fantastic. I love
her. The overly optimistic Molly Clock, Dr. Molly. The line where the bastard-coded bastard comes from.
Lady, the janitor's girlfriend and then wife.
Mike Davis, the patient who broke his penis.
Yes. Ed, who of course is played by Aziz Ansari, who I cannot stand. What is his appeal, Grady? What is his appeal?
Look, he got water balloons thrown at him, okay?
I
Colonel
try
Doctor.
to think of what his character is, but then I'm just getting every other character he's ever played confused. Like, I'm pretty sure that every character he's ever played is just a variation on the person he played on Parks and Recreation.
Yep.
I don't even remember a lot from that show. All I remember is that Aziz Ansari was like a twerp.
We've got Howie.
How could I forget? Mrs. Tanner. I think she's only in like one episode, but it's like the episode where JD,
Don't make me cry.
Yeah, where he can't save everyone and she refuses dialysis and she just wants to die.
Episode 3, where they tell you that, the show
that
isn't
early
gonna be
on,
all
really?
happy. It is episode 3. They hit you out of the bat.
That was a sad episode.
The premise of this episode is they open up and they tell you when patients come into the hospital, not including the pediatric ward, 1 in every 3 patients die. And then they follow JD with Mrs. Tanner. They follow Turk with a guy who loves baseball, a young kid. And they follow Elliot with someone who I believe speaks Spanish, which Carla has to translate for. And the end of the episode happens with all 3 of them passing away.
Yeah.
And they're like, sometimes the odds are worse than that. And that hits. They're playing Hallelujah in the background. I rewatched that scene, top 5 scene. It hits. It hits.
We've already talked about Ben, which is
Cox's brother.
That's Jordan's brother.
Messed it up.
Wife's brother.
Look, there's a lot of characters, okay? We're staring at a character list of a long list here. Snoop Dogg resident.
Yeah.
Can't forget him.
I just want to talk about Ben because, there's of course the famous, where do you think we are from JD? But then of course we have like the very first episode where he shows up where, when JD has to tell him that he has leukemia. That there's a lot of very depressing episodes in this.
Yeah. I'm gonna rewind everything that I said about Brendan Fraser. As you said, Jordan's brother. But really tight with Cox. Basically best friends, despite the fact they got divorced. Yeah, let's call it at that. Any like moments or anything else you want to throw out?
Nothing in particular. It's just all up, from season 1 to 8. It's a very fantastic show, and yeah, it honest. I love comedies that can do the whole dramatic thing really well, because I do feel that whenever some comedies try to do the drama thing, it does feel a bit forced. Like they're trying to be a bit more serious to get people to take it more seriously. But I felt that Scrubs integrated it really well. I think it's because they did it so early on, and the fact that the setting of a hospital is something that fits it so well. That's why hospital drama is pretty much its own like subgenre of fiction.
Because they made so much fun of hospital dramas throughout the show. They made fun of House. They made fun of, was it Grey's Anatomy? Probably caught the most shit.
Yeah. Yeah. But they made fun of him, but they also managed to be a good hospital drama on its own, which I think also helps the satire to stand up stronger. Is you're making fun of it, but you can also like do it really well as well.
Yeah. Alrighty, there's no grossing numbers for TV shows, so
no. But it's obviously a very popular show. I mean, it lasted 9 seasons. Like, you can't have 9 seasons and not, and not be popular.
I maintain, as much as I poop on the 9th season, I still have that DVD. If Season 9 was promoted as a completely different show, not as Season 9, just as Scrubs Medical School, a brand new show, that would have taken off and still been airing today.
A spin-off.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Probably not still airing today.
It would have gotten at least 4 seasons. And an Netflix
it would have gotten
revival.
more than one. Like, they should have just done it. It's like, this is a spin-off. Like, your old characters that are coming back, but we also have a new cast in a new setting. That's what we're doing. You're right. They should have really gone with that.
Yeah, that was their one fault, was calling it Season 9.
Yes.
Alright, you want to know what you're going to talk about next then?
I feel like you have told me, but I've honestly forgotten at this point.
It is the final episode of the season, where we have the season of, we wanted to watch this before we ended the show, so we just shoved them all together in one season.
I know what it is. I remember
you requested
what
it.
Now.
You wanted it so badly. You really wanted to see Optimus Prime die.
Yes, I did. Oh, and that's why, of course, we will be covering the second Michael Bay Transformers movie, Transformers 2, Revenge of the Fallen.
You make that joke, I will do it.
We're not watching that piece of garbage. No, we will be watching the original, The Transformers the movie, which is an awful title.
Oh, it really is.
The original animated movie from the 80s, from the old Generation 1 cartoon. 86, thank you. I can't wait to have my childhood ruined and see how terrible this movie has aged.
On the penultimate episode of Cold Potato.
And I hope you're ready to be completely lost, Grady, because you've never seen any of the original Transformers, have you?
Nope.
Well, this is going to be fun. But as always, thank you for joining us, everybody, on this, the penultimate
Transformers is penultimate. It's the final episode of the season, but penultimate.
Oh.
I refuse to comment any further.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry, I genuinely thought that you said, okay, never mind. Okay, I will keep my mouth shut. But thank you for joining us today on The Cold Potato. As always, I've been Campion, joined by my good buddy Grady, and this has been the Lexicon of Law, and we will see you all next time.
He doesn't know what's coming for him as the finale.